Hey guys! So for today's video I just wanted to talk about all the books that I read last month in March and a little bit in April. I had all these books written down in a quarantine TBR list because I thought quarantine was going to be ending sometime mid-April, but as we all know, it is being extended much longer. So yeah, but I just wanted to talk about basically all the books that I've sort of read so far. So starting off with a bang, I read It by Stephen King. So this book has been on my TBR for a really long time. It's just been sitting on my shelf and I was always too scared to pick it up. Not because scary clowns, but because it is so long. But I finally decided to pick it up and read it. So initially I wanted to do a little 24-hour readathon with this because I saw Read by Zoe did it, but I couldn't do it. It was just too long and yeah, I struggled greatly. I got about 300 pages in and just gave up. So yeah, it did not happen, but I still managed to finish it eventually. So if you don't know what it is about, I feel like most people do, but if you don't know, it is about 6 kids and their journey to defeat this clown that is terrorizing the town that they live in. So yeah, that's pretty much it. That's what this whole book is about. It starts with them as children in the first part-ish, and then throughout halfway through the book talks about them as adults, and then a little bit as children as they have flashbacks and stuff. And both times they try and defeat the clown as their children and then as their adults. So I gave this book a 2 out of 5 stars. Here's my review on it. Was not a fan. I do love Stephen King's writing sometimes. His writing can be very on and off, but when I read The Shining, I fell in love with it and I loved it so much. And I thought I would have the same outcome with this, same review, but not even close. So first of all, the book is just, overall, to me, it's just bad. There were a few parts that were kind of good, but I felt that there were more bad or unnecessary parts than there were good parts. This book is unnecessarily long. There were so many parts that could have been cut out, so many whole chapters that could have been cut out, so many chapters that I zoned out in reading or pages that I just skipped over. And when I would come back and read it, or I would zone back in, I didn't miss any information. So it was totally unnecessary to have. Another thing is that the writing and the events that happened were weird, and not in a good way. He has a lot of weird aspects in his writing, and some of them are good and they work well with the book, but this one did not. It was just weird and in such a bad way. So I'm gonna do a quick spoiler. So if you are planning on reading this book and don't want to hear the spoiler, please skip ahead. But there was a part in this book towards the end where Beverly, as a child, by the way, I'm just gonna put that out there, as a child, Beverly thinks that after they defeat the clown, they get lost. She thinks that it's a good idea to strengthen their friendship so that they can find their way out of the sewers. And she does this by telling all her guy friends, all 5 of them, to have sex with her in the sewers as a child. And she's a virgin. So yeah, that, like, how did he write that? Why did children having sex in sewers come to his mind? I don't know. So overall, just not a fan of the book. I did love the first movie, but yeah, just not a fan of this book, and it was a total waste of my time. So the next book I read was The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman. So the story follows our main character as his family is murdered and he is raised and brought up by the graveyard and all its inhabitants. So yeah, that's pretty much it. This book was really cute. It is a children's book, so if you're looking for I'm like 98% sure it's a children's book. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But if you are looking for a good middle grade book, I totally recommend this. It was a lot of fun to read. So I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. First of all, I mean, I loved all of it, every single part of it. First of all, these drawings are amazing. There's a lot of fun art in here. I love that a lot. Love picture books. Just my kid at heart. There's a lot of art, and it just made it a fun book to read. It's super easy to read and super easy to get through. I finished it in like 2 days. I could have finished it in 1, but I didn't want to. So I finished it in 2 days. It was really easy to read. Everything just flows perfectly. The story, the plot, everything just goes together perfectly. So yeah, I am a fan of some middle grade books. I do enjoy picking up a few books in the kids section every now and then if I'm looking for something good to read. I always have a few with me as well in case I get into a reading slump. They're always good books to read when you're trying to get out of a reading slump because they are easier to read. So if you are currently in a reading slump and you are looking for a good book, I recommend this. But I recommend this whether you're in a reading slump or not. It was just a lot of fun to read. So the next book that I picked up was The Couple Next Door by Shari Lapena. I think that's how you pronounce her name. Please let me know if I butchered it horribly. This story is about married couple and their daughter being kidnapped. A bunch of secrets are revealed. They're accused of her kidnapping. Their lives are turned upside down, and it's just this really cool thriller story. So I read this book in a day. I could not put it down. My uncle gave this to me and was like, here, read this. You're not going to be able to put it down. And I was like, oh, I'll probably be able to put it down sometime and just whatever. I swear to God, I couldn't put it down. Even when I was driving, I wanted to be reading this. So it was just amazing. It was an amazing plot, amazing story, lots of twists and turns, and lots of cliffhangers. Although I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars, mainly for the fact that there was weak character development and I felt the writing was a little bit young. By young, I just mean that from the other books that I read, it was very YA, but like years ago YA. It's something that I would definitely have loved when I was like 13, 14, but now it's like the writing style is something that I don't normally read or see in a lot of books that I have. Other than that, the plot was amazing. I did love all the suspense. About the weak character development, I just felt that their characters, the characters in this book were just very bland. They didn't have a lot of depth to them. They were just kind of there, and it was the plot that was the main focus of the story, which I'm not mad about. I just wish that they had a little bit more life to them, I guess. So the 4th book that I read, I think this is number 4, was The Farm by Joanne Ramos. I don't have the physical copy with me because I read this book on my Kindle, so I'll just put a photo up here. So yeah, the story follows a young Filipina immigrant as she struggles to make a living as a single mother for herself and her daughter. She is working a minimum wage job and is working long hours and is still not making ends meet. She is then introduced to the farm and basically is a surrogate for rich people and is being paid to carry a baby. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. It was so interesting to read about. The plot was a lot more interesting and had a lot more depth than what I thought it would have. I thought it would be a very, I don't want to say basic plot, but I thought I knew sort of everything that was going to happen going into the book, but there were so many unexpected twists and turns, and I love that. It was also another quick read. It was 300 something pages, so a relatively short book. I went through it pretty quickly. It also took me back home. If you don't know, I was born and raised in the Philippines. I'm also half Filipino, so yeah, I've been away from home for almost a year now, and it just took me back home and made me think of everything and all the struggles that my mom is going through to help support me here in America, and it's just, yeah, it was a really good book to read. I also love that this book, written by a Filipino author with the main characters being Filipino, is doing so well. There are so many reviews on it. I've heard a lot about it. So yeah, that just makes me really happy. So the next book that I read was An American Marriage by Tayari Jones. So the story follows a married couple, Celestial and Roy, and their struggles in their relationship as Roy is wrongfully incarcerated. So I gave this a 3.7 out of 5 stars. I enjoyed the plot, I enjoyed the story. I found it very interesting to read about characters' relationships and everything. It was nice to read something different other than a very plot-heavy book. It was more on characters and their developments and their lives, and I enjoyed that. I will say it was a very slow read for me. It took me a lot longer to read than I thought it would. There were just parts of the book that were uneventful and, not gonna lie, a little bit boring. So it took me a while to get through the book. But yeah, other than it being slow, I really enjoyed the story and the characters and all the events that took place. I just wish that, I guess some parts were a little bit less boring. So the next book that I read was Animal Farm by George Orwell. I finally decided to pick this up. My school never required me to read this, and I know a lot of schools, not all schools here, require you to read this, or it's on a lot of syllabuses, is that a word? But it was not on mine back home, so I never actually read this until recently. So if you don't know what Animal Farm is about, it talks about a revolution of animals in the farm as they try and succeed to overthrow the humans that are living there and controlling them. The animals try and create a just and equal society, but slowly a tyranny starts to grow. So I gave this a 4.5 out of 5 stars. I love George Orwell. I read 1984 a few years back and loved it. I finished it in a day. It was so good. So that's why I was very excited to read this. I love his writing style. I'm a huge fan of what he does write about and how it has an impact on the real world. So yeah, the plot was amazing. It was super easy to get through. It's only 140 pages long, so you can finish it in a day in one sitting. Really easy and really fun to read. Also, side note, my poor copy of this book. When I was on the last 2 or 3 chapters, I also had the audiobook for this. I was bringing this and my phone with me into the bathroom with my clothes to change, and the book was on top of my clothes and my phone was on top as well. And as I was going to set down my clothes on the counter, the book and my phone slid off my clothes into the toilet. So yeah, this poor copy was a little bit ruined because it fell into the toilet along with my phone. My phone is okay, but my poor book. So the second to the last book that I read was Alice Isn't Dead by Joseph Fink. This was originally a podcast, but they also have it in book form, the one that I am currently holding. So this story follows our main character Keisha as she picks up a job as a trucker to look for her wife who is presumed dead. Secrets about the world are unraveled and she has to fight to stay alive to look for the love of her life. So I gave this a 3.7 out of 5 stars. I found the story very interesting and captivating. A lot of twists and turns, which y'all know I love. A lot of unexpected events and secrets being unveiled. There was some good character development, nothing too major, but the characters had some life to them, and it was relatively similar to the podcast. I did listen to a little bit of the podcast. I never finished it, but I got about halfway through, and it is pretty similar, but there are a few things that are different and a few elements in the podcast that aren't here, but that's okay because there are just some things in the podcast that can't be transferred into book form. So yes, I recommend this book a lot, but I will recommend the podcast more. I just find it a little bit more interesting, and if you're not really into reading that much, you will definitely enjoy the podcast. So the last and final book that I read was A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. So the story follows 4 main characters, Willem, JB, Jude, and Malcolm, and their move to New York in search of fame, fortune, and the lives that they dream for. So it follows their lives from childhood all the way up to death, and basically talks about all the events that have unfolded in their lives all their misfortune, all their troubles, their relationships built and lost, and all that fun stuff. So this story, it mainly focuses on the characters and not so much on the plot. Of course, the plot is there to help support these characters, but it isn't the main focus of the story. So I give this book a legendary 5 out of 5 stars. So I don't give most books 5 out of 5 stars. Even if I love it so much, I won't give it 5 stars because there was always something that was lacking or some like little part that I didn't like. But there was nothing about this book that I didn't like. It was absolutely amazing. The characters were unbelievable. I have never gotten attached to characters like I have in this book. It was so emotional. I was crying so much, especially towards the end. It was on my mind constantly. So I actually did a 24-hour reading challenge with this, and it was just, I mean, I would have read it in 24 hours even if I wasn't doing the challenge. It was so good. I could not put it down. And normally I'm only like that with a book when it's a thriller or something, but not when it's just, you know, something like this. But I couldn't put it down. I needed to know what was going to happen next. I needed to know what was going to happen to Jude. I needed to know what Willem was going to do. I needed to know what was happening to Malcolm, and I needed to know what was happening with Jake. Like, I needed to know everything all the time. I love this book. You can go ahead and check out my 24-hour reading challenge video for this book, because I did talk about each character in depth and the story a lot more. But yeah, no, it was really good. Also, if you want to see me cry, go check out that video. I will have it linked down below and probably somewhere up here. Those are all the books I have read so far in this quarantine. I just want to put out a quick disclaimer. I am not trying to exploit the coronavirus and the quarantine that is currently happening. It's just what I'm trying to do to stay sane. I know right now is such a scary and tough time for everyone. For me, I'm having a really hard time being away from my family and not knowing what's happening with them every second, and I bet the same thing for them, especially for my mom. I can't imagine what she's going through, that her daughter's halfway across the world in a scary time like this and she can't be there for her. So this is my way of staying sane. I know everyone has their own ways, and this is just my way of trying to find some sort of escape. So yeah, thank you all for watching this video, and I hope you'll want to pick up some of these books that I've read, except It. I will not recommend It. That's just me personally, but yeah. And let me know in the comments down below if you guys have read any of these books recently or want to read any of these books, if you want any more in-detailed reviews about them and whatnot. So yeah, thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please subscribe and give this video a big thumbs up, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye!